Oh my gosh, wow. I wish I had brought my phone with me. I would have taken a photo of you all. This really is quite an amazing sight, for me anyway. I would have tweeted that photo and shared you all with my Twitter mates. I think some of you are here. Heoia no tēnā koe te katoa. We're here this evening to answer the question, without Māori art, who are we? And as a weaver, I like to look for the answers of how weaving is put together by tipping out the contents of the kete and looking at the inside. I like to turn a piece of weaving around and look at the back of it. I like to flip it upside down and see what's going underneath, and that's where I find the answers. So, in speaking on tonight's kaupapa of without Māori art, who are we? I want to flip that, and I want to speak on with Māori art, who am I? That makes sense to me. So in thinking about that new question that I put to myself, I started thinking about this as I was weaving, and recently I cast on a whole lot of muka to start a kākahu, to weave a kākahu for one of my mokopuna. And as I was casting on all of this muka, I thought about whakamata, the first line, the first cast on row of muka for a kākahu, and how important whakamata is. That row, that very first row, cast on row, it sets the tension, and everything that follows in the weaving of that kākahu is based on that time in the weaver's life. Te aho tapu, the sacred line, the sacred thread, the first row of tāniko, is so important. That beginning is so important. And it's so important that when weaving tāniko, the first row, te aho tapu, a weaver will start it and complete it without stopping. And so there is an unbroken thought. There is an unbroken time in that weaver's life where her whole focus is on that row. And that's important because whatever is set in that row of tāniko, that first row of tāniko, te aho tapu, dictates everything else that follows. Whatever is set in that first row of tāniko dictates how that tāniko will look when it's completed. So beginnings are important. Here is my beginning. I've got a tissue tucked up my cardigan here just in case I cry. My great-grandmother, Veranoa Hetet. My Auntie Kahu is here somewhere. Auntie Kahu will look at this photo with the same aroha as I do, because this is how we remember Nana. And my Auntie Kahu, te kanawa, beautiful weaver, will also tautoko me when I say that we were most blessed to have our kuia, who was born in the 1800s, still with us when some of us, well, I was 29 when she passed away, but some of our cousins, Kahu's older siblings, were in their 50s. That's how blessed we were to have Nana. She was a weaver and a teacher, and an awesome Nana. And I feel quite comforted having my papa behind me, my dad. My dad, Veranoa Hetet, like Mātai said, he's a master carver. He was pulled out of St. Stephen's College by his iwi, and he was sent to learn carving, learn whakairo under the guidance of Hone Taiapa. And he remained a carver for the rest of his life and became a teacher. He no longer teaches large groups now, although he has taught dozens of men over his lifetime. But he has one protege, one long-standing student who has remained with him for 35 years. And that's my husband, Sam Hauwahu. Dad's standing by one of the waka that he and Sam and their team carved. Dad's first wharenui that he worked on was tāpeka at Waihi, ko Ngāti Tūwharetoa. He's worked on Haireni, Rehua, Waiwhetu and Wainui o Mata. It's terrible when you name things because there's always the fear that you might miss something out. Anyway, my mum, Veranoa Hetet, who grew up on her marae at Waiwhetu, and she learnt raranga and tāneko when she was young. And when her and Dad saw each other and fell in love at a New Year's Eve party at Hone Taipa's house, they married, and they were the first ones married at Waiwhetu marae. Dad was a carver of that marae, and that's where they courted. So Dad's room where he slept is now the mattress room. It's really oh yeah, Dad. So once Mum and Dad married, Mum became a student of Nenarangi Māori. So this is my beginning. They set te aho tapu for me. They laid out the pattern so clearly, and my life was set. Not needing the handkerchief right now, which is good. It's me. This is my first weaving class. I look at this photo sometimes and wonder if this was the day I fell in love with korowai. Because of all the kākahu that can be woven, of all the kākahu that can be worn, korowai are my favourite. I have a thing about korowai, and those of you who follow me on social media know that I have a thing about korowai. Those words will be on my headstone. So, being a mokopuna, Nenarangi Māori wrote a waiata for her mokopuna, asking us to uphold the arts. And when looking at this question with Māori art, who am I could answer that question simply by singing the words of Nenarangi Māori's waiata. But I can't sing. I'm a visual artist, not a performing artist. So instead of trying to sing Nana's waiata, I bought her kākahu, as well as a few others. And there are two out there in the audience somewhere doing the rounds. So I bought those, so as I am speaking, they can be passed around and touched, and those of you who get to hold them become a part of their story. Nō reira, tēnā koutou. So these three kākahu, they share a tie. There are threads that hold them all together. And although they were woven in different decades, there are these ties that hold them together. This first one was woven in the very early 1900s. This one was woven in 1986, and this was woven only 3-4 years ago. So they're very different in age, but they have a common tie. They were all woven from muka that was extracted from the same variety of harakeke, the same plant. They were all woven using the same ancient weaving technique called whatu. They were all woven by women from the same whānau, and they were all woven for mokopuna. I'm going to walk over here. This exquisite korowai was woven by Nena Rangi Māori. Oh, hang on, I need to change that. Was woven by Nena Rangi Māori, there's a close-up. For one of her mokopuna, my papa, my dad. This kahukiwi was woven by my mum, Ere Nora, for one of her mokopuna, my son, one of my sons. And that little korowai was woven by me for one of my mokopuna, Hinepare Rangi Māori. So they have this common tie, they have these common threads running through them, but there is one tie that is the strongest and that holds them all together, and that is a grandmother's love for her mokopuna. And although my nana and my mum are no longer here, their obvious love for their mokopuna can be touched. And every time these kākahu are worn, that mokopuna is being embraced by their nanny. So these kākahu, they had a joyous beginning. The once upon a time was simply, I'm weaving a kākahu for my mokopuna. It's so joyous, such a happy beginning. That whakamata, that cast on row would have been joyous and the tension would have been perfect. But sometimes this story isn't happy or joyous. Sometimes the story is sad. And sometimes that sad story needs an outlet. It needs to be told in order for it to become a story of healing. And there is a kākahu, a korowai being passed around right now, and the pictures of it are up on the screens. This korowai is one such korowai. She was woven in 2020. 2020, what a year. And I remember 2020 as being a year much turbulence. It was unsettling. It was filled with uncertainty. And I tried to weave a kākahu. Oh my gosh, I'm running out of time. I tried to weave a kākahu every year, but 2020 was so unsettling that I hadn't. So in October, I'm just going to take my time. I hope you don't mind. I should ask the boss. So at the end of 2020, we were already at the end of October. I needed to do something about that because the world had gone through this unsettling and uncertain and turbulent time, but my family had gone through a sad time in that we had lost a mokopuna in an advanced stage of pregnancy. So that was a mokopuna that Sam, my husband, and I would never get to hold or take to McDonald's for a happy meal. You know, those things you want to do with your mokopuna. So it was a year filled with sadness. And at the end of October, I decided that's enough. I'm over the sadness. I'm over the feeling of hopelessness. I want to change the narrative. And so I decided, it was a ridiculous task I had set myself, but I decided that I was going to weave a kākahu and weave a kākahu that represented hope. And so I went out and cut Nana's muka, cut some harakeke, muka harakeke, and started making muka. And as I was making muka, look, I'm making the motion of making muka. As I was making muka, I started thinking about the design of this kākahu and what it represented. And I decided that a korowai hihima would be the most appropriate korowai to weave. I wanted the sun to rise. You know, he rānoa pōpō, the sun will rise, and so a korowai hihima. And I set about weaving this korowai hihima, and as I was weaving it, I thought about the tikanga of the korowai. What would it be used for? And I thought about this mokopuna that I would never hold, and I thought about the other mokopuna that I had, and I thought about all the mokopuna that I wanted to come into my life. And so I decided then that the tikanga of this korowai should be that it be a kaitiaki of sorts for whoever in my whānau was pregnant. It would be in their home and remain there until that baby was born. I put myself, we're in November at this stage, and I'm wanting to finish this before midnight on the 31st of December 2020, because there is no way that 2021 was going to start without hope. It's ridiculous. I had one day off, that was Christmas Day. So I put myself in a lockdown, and it was a different kind of lockdown from the one we had in March. I put myself in a lockdown and I put my blinkers on and I encased myself in this bubble, and I thought about hope. I thought about the happy things. I drank a lot of water. I chased the sun around my lounge. In the morning I wove on this seat. In the afternoon I wove over there on the other side of the lounge. I surrounded myself and filled myself with hope. I put my love into every stitch of that korowai hihima and thought about the mokopuna that were to come. So I finished her on December the 29th, 2020. And she went straight to the home of the couple, of my son and daughter-in-law, who had earlier in the year lost their baby because they were pregnant again. And I named this cloak Ngā Tūmanako, the Hopes. And that's Maya. She stayed in Ngā Tūmanako, the cloak, the korowai hihima, stayed in the home of Te Rangi and Olivia until Maya was born. I thought Ngā Tūmanako would come home to me, but she was due straight away with another son and another daughter-in-law. And Ngā Tūmanako, the korowai hihima, stayed in their home until Arahia was born. Can you see, or am I blocking that screen? Because you have to see my moko. I mean, you're going to see a pattern happening here, because it went straight from Arahia, that darling moko, to another darling mokopuna, straight away, Rangiatia. Busy korowai hihima, and I realised I should have told you this before I passed you around, because there's magic muka in that korowai. Tanya, Justin, you know, in 9 months' time there might be a whole lot of babies called matariki. Anyway, that's Rangiatia. But wait, there's more. The korowai went from Rangiatia straight to the home of another son and daughter-in-law until our little moko boy Mahaki was born. She's home now. That korowai, well, she's here, but she's home. She served us well, and she lived up to my dreams for her. Also being passed around tonight is this korowai. And this is my mokopuna, Hawaii. You know, when you've got a lot of mokopuna, Sam and I have got 8 mokopuna, you have to look carefully before you say the name. So this is Hawaii, and she's wearing this korowai that I wove for her before she was born. And this was at a time when some of my first cousins were on to mokopuna number 3 or 4. You know, and I'd go to the marae and I'd see them, all those nannies talking, and I'd come around the corner and they would stop. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about your mokopuna, because I had none. They didn't want to hurt my feelings. One night I watched a movie with Kevin Costner called A Field of Dreams. It's a great movie. And he builds this baseball diamond, and he keeps saying throughout the movie, build it, they will come, build it, they will come. And I thought, oh, no, light bulb. Weave it, they will come. So I went and cut Nana's muka flax, made muka, thought about this muka that hadn't even been conceived. None of my sons had a girlfriend at the time, so this was, I was dreaming big. I thought about the design. Now, Nena Rangimari's eldest son is my granddad. And he married a Ngāti Tūwhare Toa woman in Mutaturangi and lived there most of his life. He became a keen trout fisherman. And I remember my grandfather, big builder's hands, making these teeny weeny little fishing lures out of little feathers, flies, fishing, for trout. And I was always fascinated, and as an adult, I wondered if he had watched his mother, Nena Rangimari, preparing feathers, and that's why he knew what to do. So I put the feathers in differently. I made these little fishing lures and I put them in instead of weaving them in the normal way to represent my grandfather. And I put all the teeny weeny little feathers, and they're all from birds from everywhere. There's pheasant, there's kiwi, there's kaka, there's kakapo, there's kia, there's pukeko, there's takahe, da-da-da-da-da-da. And I imagined this cloak to be a storytelling cloak. My moho that hadn't been conceived yet, lying on me with this korowai draped over us like a blanket, and her or him saying, "Nanny, what's that feather? What's that bird? What's that colour?" These were all the dreams I had of this baby. So she was conceived about 2 years after I started the korowai, and I put it on her first birthday. And I put her under me, and I hid our faces under this korowai, and I whispered my hopes for her. Isn't she gorgeous? And she's wearing her great-grandmother Ere Nora's raukura. My mum was a believer or a follower of Te Whiti. Heoi anō. So the question I asked was, with Māori art, who am I? I am a nanny weaving kākahu for her mokopuna, so that when I am no longer here, they can wrap themselves up in my love. I am a mother weaving protection for her children. I am a wife of a carver, filling our home with creativity for our family. I am a daughter honouring her parents' teachings. And I am a mokopuna who is trying to uphold the arts as her great-grandmother asked. I think it's probably appropriate, and I don't want to, but I think it's appropriate. I can hear my mum saying, "Come on," that I sing the last line of Nena Rangimari's waiata that she wrote for her mokopuna. Whakumana no tua whakarere no aku tūpuna I mauri a mai nei I Hawaii ki rāno e. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Ko te reo, te take.